has been a historical day for chess. Like, I really think that we're gonna think back in the future and say the 19th of January 2023 is where everything changed. Am I talking about Magnus Carlsen? Yes, I am. Guys, I am in shock. I was gonna show you other games first, but I'm gonna start showing you the Magnus Carlsen versus NODIRBEK Abdusattorov game that just happened today in round 4 of Tata Steel Chess Masters. I'm in shock. I don't have words. I will also show you 2 more games after this one. One with a beautiful sacrifice of a piece and, well, even a trapped queen at Grandmaster 2700 level. Insane. And then I'll also show you a really beautiful game where, well, one of the players outplayed the other, and it was just a fantastic endgame that I think that we will all learn a lot from. So everybody, let's start with the Magnus Carlsen game. I know that is the game most of you are here for. Wow, is all I have to say. He was playing against NODIRBEK Abdusattorov, who is an 18-year-old chess prodigy from Uzbekistan. He's been having a fantastic chess year, and he won, well, he and his team won the Chess Olympiad now a few months ago. So the game started at c4, c5, and we had here a symmetrical English opening. Now, guys, I love this because I played this with the black pieces, so I love this opening. So knight c6 and e3 and e5 was played here. The idea is simply that, you know, you want to stop Magnus from going d4. So that is what NODIRBEK is doing, is trying to stop Magnus from going d4. d4 here is the main move anyways, but actually Magnus opted to go for a little bit less common bishop e2. Now, this is still theory, but typically you want to try to go d4 as soon as possible to get as much space as possible in the center. The idea of going bishop e2 is Magnus saying, hey, I'm going to wait a little bit with it. I'm going to castle first. I'm going to develop my pieces, and then d4 is coming. But it gives chance for black to play d5 and for NODIRBEK to immediately get the center in the position. So here you have to exchange, and this has been played in the past several times. And now castles and bishop e7, bishop b5, pinning this knight. Now in this position, black is exchanged on c3, and now Magnus recaptured with the b pawn because he wants to go d4 and he wants to get as much center as possible. It doesn't make sense to take with the d pawn because then, you know, he would never be able to go d4. So queen c7, preventing Magnus from going knight takes e5, as there is a pin going on right now, so this move was a threat. And now, finally, Magnus goes d4. Finally, he's getting the center. So now NODIRBEK exchanged a couple times, and Magnus recaptured with the knight. Bishop d7 to defend this knight. Knight f3, getting the knight back. Bishop f6, and now everybody, this is the day of the sacrifices. What do I typically do when they attack my rook? I move it. I defend it. But what does Magnus do when they attack his rook? He says, I don't care. And he goes bishop a3. So now, I mean, he's literally saying, hey, NODIRBEK, take my rook. I am going to be stopping you from castling kingside. I'm going to be attacking you if you castle queenside. And I'm going to get lots of compensation. So he exchanged, and then queenside castles. Rook c1, putting the rook in the file with the queen and the king. King b8, getting the king out of the way. And now Magnus captured the pawn and said thank you. Rook g8, kicking the queen away, but also putting some pressure on this king. I mean, look at this king. This king may have looked safe in the past, but is it really so safe? And now Magnus did a mistake. Who am I to say that Magnus did a mistake? Nobody, but the engine is telling me that he did it, and that's why I'm telling you. Guys, everything I'm trying to do here is just to tell you what the engine is saying and explain to you the moves so that you understand them. Obviously, Magnus is a million times better than me, and all these players participating are a million times better than me and that you. But hopefully, you know, this makes you understand the moves that the engine is saying. So guys, here Magnus went queen b2. Why is this a mistake, you may say? Why is queen b2 worse than another move? Well, because of the following reason. Because actually here, NODIRBEK can go bishop g4, which is the move that he did. And this is a fantastic chess move. Why? Because what Magnus wants to do is that he wants to capture on c6. He wants to take this. But he cannot do it now because after bishop takes c6, NODIRBEK can capture back the bishop with the queen. And the rook cannot capture because there is a back rank checkmate. So it was crucial here for the queen to go all the way back to a1 or to c3, but simply so that after bishop g4 and bishop takes, NODIRBEK is forced to capture with the pawn and not with the queen. We see here the big difference, as now the queen is preventing, the rook from checkmating. So big difference, queen b2, and now bishop g4. The move that I was talking about, bishop g4, and now, like I said, this move does not work. So he had to move the knight because otherwise this is going to be hanging. Knight e1, and now rook d1. What is black doing? He's exchanging. He's saying, Magnus, you gave up an exchange in the opening. I'm going to exchange my pieces, and you're going to have to prove to me that you're better. But how are you going to be better if you don't have any pieces to attack me with? I mean, in all endgames, NODIRBEK is going to be much better because he's up material. It's as simple as that. So he exchanged, and now this is definitely much better, but this is definitely an advantage for black because white's advantage was in the attack, but there's no attack anymore. So bishop f1, getting the bishop back in defense, and knight e5, h3 preventing knight g4, threatening queen h2 checkmate, bishop f3, and queen d4. Now, why is queen d4 a double question mark move? Well, the queen but the queen, if it's going to move somewhere, it's much better to move the queen to b1. Why? Because on b1, the queen is threatening this pawn on h7. So we can see that in the game, actually, after queen d4, NODIRBEK went rook d8 and threatened the queen, and after queen h4, the queen is threatening on h7. But in the previous position with the queen on b1, threatening here, the rook was on g8. So now the rook is more active. The rook is much better placed in the open file. And so this is just much better. A much better variation for black. So bishop d5, the bishop moved. Magnus captured on h7 and bishop c4. Now black is trying to exchange. So in this position, the best move would have been to go queen h4. Because after queen h4, well, after something like takes and king takes f1, the queen is a little bit more active over here. And for instance, now if something like queen c4, which is a really scary threat, this is actually okay for white. It's okay to exchange queens in this position because white has right now a couple pawns for the exchange. So this actually is a pretty equal endgame. So that is the reason why it was good to have the queen over here stopping this check, because now after bishop b2 and bishop exchanges and the check on c4, we can see that the queen is very active on c4. And not only that, the pawn on a2 is also going to be falling. This pawn is very weak. So knight c6, the knight went back because it was under attack. Knight f3, and queen takes a2. Another pawn falls for Magnus. And now the question becomes, he's an exchange down. He only has one pawn for the exchange, but black has these two really strong passed pawns that are together. The question is, what is going on? What is Magnus doing? What really is going on here? That is the question. So bishop f6 is threatening the rook d1 check, and now the a pawn starts pushing. I mean, this pawn is just going to be so strong. It's really important for Magnus to make sure that he's able to exchange some pawn for one of these, because if NODIRBEK just has the two pawns running down, I mean, this is just going to be so crazy. It's going to be so good for him. It's going to be almost impossible to stop them. So knight d4, queen d5, queen c2, and now the check. f4 is pretty much the only good move. And now rook takes d4. Brilliant, is chess.com saying. What is the idea? Well, I mean, here the idea is just simply that he's just going to enter a really good endgame. Rook takes d4. Pawn takes is not possible because the bishop is hanging. So the bishop has to capture on d4. And after this, after the exchanges, queen takes f4 check, we can see that black is going to enter an endgame where he's a pawn up. NODIRBEK is just a pawn up against Magnus Carlsen in a queen endgame. This is impossible for NODIRBEK to lose. Well, impossible. I mean, he's not going to lose it. He's not going to lose it. Would many of us other people lose it? Maybe. But NODIRBEK doesn't lose it. So h4, Magnus needs to start getting some sort of counterattack with this h-pawn and a4. And now we can see that there's an exchange of pawns, which is good for Magnus. He's able to exchange a pawn, and he's even going to be able to exchange another one, as you guys will see in just a moment. Yeah, there we go. He goes g4, and he exchanges another pawn. But this endgame with queen and king versus queen and king versus queen, king, and pawn is just really good for black because this king is so far away. And the thing is that, you know, NODIRBEK, he needs to bring this king up. I mean, to win, he's going to have the king and the pawn. So he's going to have to bring the king all the way up. But it's going to be hard for Magnus to, like, check him a million times because the queen can block the checks. The only chance Magnus has is by checking him a million times. But ultimately, you know, there shouldn't be enough checks. So king b6, you can see the queen stays here, cutting off the king. And now the pawn starts pushing. King and the pawn are coordinating beautifully. And, I mean, Magnus is doing anything to stop the pawn, to stop the king, but it's just so hard. Queen check, and after king g3, b2, and Magnus Carlsen resigns. Insane. Absolutely insane. He loses against NODIRBEK Abdusattorov. Fantastic game by NODIRBEK. But what is more insane, more than anything, is that, you know, Magnus does lose chess games, obviously. I mean, he's a human being like all the rest of us, even though he's a world champion. But he has not lost 2 chess games in a row since 2015. 2 classical chess games in a row. I mean, it's been 8 years of Magnus Carlsen not doing this. And today, everybody, we witnessed history in that sense because he did it. And the reason why it's also even bigger is because, I mean, Magnus Carlsen, he's not playing the World Chess Championship match this year. The question kind of is, you know, what is Magnus' future right now? And these 2 losses, they may just be 2 losses that will be completely forgotten. And, you know, he'll start doing the stuff that Magnus Carlsen always does, which is just winning, and being the greatest in the world. Or it might be the start of something else. We don't know, but it's going to be really interesting to follow the following games in Tata Steel of Magnus Carlsen. We're going to be checking out his games very closely, and I'm really excited to see what happens in this tournament. So, that was the first match. Now, guys, the next match that I'm going to show you was another decisive game of Tata Steel Masters. And I know that many of you might want to click away from the video right now because you've already seen the big thing of Magnus Carlsen. But guys, this game was beautiful, okay? The next game that I'm going to show you was really beautiful. And it was, this one. I'm going to show you the 11 Aronian one right after. But it was really beautiful because Parham actually sacrificed a piece at one point, which is really nice. I mean, he was just a piece down, which at, you know, 2700 level is just absolutely amazing. It was really beautiful. And yeah, and you know, there may have been a trapped queen at some point in this game too. So I'm going to show you this game as well, and then I'll show you the Aronian Keymer one, which is another fantastic one. So d4, d5, c4 captures. This was a queen's gambit accepted. And now e5 is just trying to basically break the center, but now white defends the pawn. Bishop b4 check, blocking, and knight f6. Now the main move is actually to capture on d4, but this has also been played a lot of times. And now basically black is saying, I'm giving you one of my central pawns, but I'm going to be defending my c4 pawn, and this pawn is going to be amazing. So f3, defending the e4 pawn. You don't want to give this one away. Castles. And a3, bishop a5, and now a4. And now the question is, what do you do with this pawn? Now, one might think that a6 or c6, simply defending the pawn, are very normal continuations, which they are. But actually, Jordan van Foreest here, who is a really strong grandmaster from Netherlands, by the way, I forgot to mention that, really strong. He is 23 years old, I believe. He's actually born the same day as me. on a different year. The 30th of April, we share the same birthday. Not only that, everybody, I need to tell you this. I played Jordan Van Foreest on my birthday once. We were both having a birthday that day, and we played against each other. That is a funny story. I lost, so he had the better birthday, but it's okay. So a4, he went c5 here, which is actually kind of crazy because he's just giving up a pawn, and Parham just said, you know what, I'm going to capture it. Queen e8, threatening the knight, and now, everybody, Parham sacrificed the piece. He said, I don't care about the knight. I'm going to capture him, b5, and I do not care. Will he get several pawns for the piece? He will get 2, perhaps 3. But it's still crazy. In the opening, in move 11, he sacrifices a piece. I mean, I just find that fascinating. So, the bishop is under attack. He has to exchange. And now, Jordan said, I'm going to take your piece. So now, queen d4. Fantastic move. Actually, the only really good move in that position. What is the idea? Well, the idea is just that if takes and takes, then the pawn structure of white is going to be amazing. These pieces are doing absolutely nothing. So even though white is a piece down, I mean, these pieces are useless right now. The knight, where does the knight go? That is the question, right? And this queen is right now really well placed here. So we cannot exchange. And c6 now. Now, c6 makes sense because he's just trying to completely trap this knight and just saying, you know, this knight is trapped. You are going to have to sacrifice the knight for the pawn. But that is the thing, right? That after bishop e6 and bishop e2, black can now sacrifice the knight back, and this is now going to become equal material as this pawn is going to be falling. But white is still going to be better because white is going to have the bishop pair. White is just going to have more active pieces. The rook is going to be really well placed. This pawn is going to be weak. This pawn is going to be weak. So white is still going to be better. But queen f2, a5, black is starting to push the pawn. And then now castles. All the pieces are developed. a4, black really wants to, I mean, Jordan is saying, hey, my a pawn needs to go all the way. Like, I'm going to try to promote it. Bishop d4, blocking this rook and activating this bishop. Knight e8, f4, giving up the e4 pawn, but saying, I want to go f5 and I'm going to go f6. Was this objectively the best idea? Perhaps not. Yes, there's bishop f3 winning a rook, but I mean, actually, white has a lot of attack on this king. And, you know, was it objectively the best move? No, but did it become really good based on what happened in the game? Yes. Bishop d5, rook a e1, threatening a little bit on this queen. Now, queen e7 or queen c2 would be really good, getting the queen out of the way, because, guys, queens on the same file as rooks are really scary. But did Jordan do that? No. He went a3 and said, I don't care. But this is actually a blunder because, guys, there's bishop h5 over here and the queen is trapped. Completely trapped. The queen cannot go anywhere. Jordan just lost his queen here on move 24. I mean, there was nothing he could do. So after a2, he's trying to promote. After captures, we can see now promotion does not work because he'll take, and then go rook e1 back. So black has to capture back. Rook a1 stopping promotion. And now he blocks the rook from coming into b1. Look at that. It's really beautiful. So rook a6. And I mean, Parham is going to have to give away his bishop. But at least he'll get the super dangerous pawn on a2 that was just probably really, really, really annoying him as his rook was glued on a1, stopping it. So rook takes b6. And in this position, I mean, yeah, white is getting some air, but this is just really comfortable to play as white because white has a queen for a rook and a knight, and that is just fantastic. It's better material. This pawn is really weak, and it's just much better to have that. So he was probably, Parham was right now probably really enjoying his life and his position. I would at least. But it's not only that. This king is also really weak. The rook is coming back defending. I mean, black's pieces are just so much worse than white's. So now white is trying to exchange a little bit because if you exchange, then it's just going to be better as he's material up. So he's just defending. Parham is just defending from any threats. And now, I mean, this bishop and the queen against this king are just so strong. The knight is stuck here. And this continued for a few more moves. But we can see here that, you know, black just didn't have any sort of counterplay. Nothing. And after knight f6 and queen g5, Jordan Van Foreest resigned. Parham won in this position because he's going to be winning this pawn on h4. There's nothing that you can do about it. And this pawn right here, it's actually going to be a winning pawn. This pawn is just going to push all the way and it's going to win. This pawn is going to win the game. And, you know, black's pieces are just so glued right now. So Jordan said, there's nothing more to do. Let's go home. No, he didn't go home, but he resigned. So this was a fantastic game by Parham, I think. This was absolutely great. And we are now going to go to the final game that I'm going to show you, which you saw a little sneak peek from before, between Grandmaster Levin Aronian, who plays for the United States. He's from Armenia, has played for Armenia for many, many years, really strong Grandmaster, and Vincent Keymer. And guys, this is an underdog story in the sense that Vincent Keymer, he is a chess prodigy who is 18 years old from Germany, but he's really good, guys. You know why? Because he became number 2 in the World Rapid Chess Championship match he became number 2 in the World Rapid Chess Championship. I said that right. Yeah. Now, like back in December, you guys know the Rapid Championship happening in Kazakhstan, the World Championship in Rapid. He became number 2 after Magnus Carlsen. So this guy is really good. Really, really, really good. And he's really young. He's Germany's biggest prodigy right now. He's the greatest chess player from Germany, I mean, right now, and he's only 18 years old. So it's fantastic. So E4, E5, and we saw here a Ruy Lopez. Now, the Ruy Lopez has a lot of theory. It's a Spanish. But yeah, the idea is basically white is just trying to go D4 and take some center. And so these are all very standard moves. Nothing crazy. Now D5, basically blocking the center. I mean, like D5 makes sense because you're getting a lot of space. You're threatening the knight. The knight has to go back. But I mean, a lot of times white plays on the center and now white is blocking off the center. But the idea is that he's going to go B3 and C4 and get this really beautiful little chain of pawns here. So we can see here C6, knight F1. I mean, now white try to reroute their pieces, which I feel like in the Spanish, it's all about rerouting your pieces into the best squares possible, which probably is the way it should be in chess all the time. We should all try to put our pieces in the best squares possible. But yeah, that is what Aronian is doing right now. So H3 and takes, and now there was an exchange on the A file. Queen C7, the rook is trying to go to A8. So rook C1, rook in the same file as the queen. I mean, we've seen that before. It's good. There are right now ideas of capturing on B5. So that is why he's going there. In rook A8, threatening the queen, and now queen A5. The queen just doesn't want to stay here in the same file as the rook. I mean, we saw what happened in the other game when that happened. So, knight G3, the knight is on its path to the fantastic F5 square, the greatest square in chess, pretty much. B4, closing down the queen side. Knight E1, the other knight is rerouting itself as well. And now, knight F5, the knight finally gets to the square it was meant to be in. So, C takes D5. I mean, black is just trying to block the center. And bishop C8 wants to exchange the bishop for the knight. Bishop D2. Knight F6, knight G3. White does not want black to exchange the bishop for the knight. Instead, you know, you're kind of waiting here. Because the bishop has to stay in this diagonal, otherwise the knight will come back here again. And now black went bishop E7. So knight D3 was played now. The idea is simply to exchange this knight for this one. White is still trying to just find the best pieces to exchange. After takes, bishop D7, bishop F5. Aronian wants to exchange his bishops because he wants to have his knight once again on F5. Like I said, these moves are a little bit like Spanish football. They're a little bit like tiki-taka. You know, like you're just doing small moves, boom, 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 boom. You're just trying to get close, slowly. You're trying to improve your position and you're just going kind of slow, you know? Bishop B1. Now we might see some action. Queen C2 could have been here a really good idea, with the idea of simply trying to go knight H5 and sort of checkmating. I mean, the queen and the bishop here become a battery towards the king, but instead Levin opted to go for F4. Now, in this position, Vincent, he could have done a lot of different stuff. He could have gone queen B6 check, queen C5 check. I mean, the queen pretty much does want to check over here because after the king moves, then this square might become a little bit weak. But in this position, he went rook E8. And this is according to the engine, a mistake. Now, why is this a mistake? Because now there's this fantastic move, rook F1, and actually white's attack on black's king is becoming bigger and bigger. It's becoming really strong. Vincent went bishop d8, and now there is f takes e5. And this is now a very, very, very tricky situation. Vincent started with queen c5 check, and now the question is, does he capture with the pawn or with the rook? What does he capture with? Now, it's a sort of bad situation either way, because if he captures with the pawn, there's going to be rook takes f6. And after pawn takes f6, I mean, this pawn is weak. If bishop takes f6, knight e4, and I mean, black's position on the king side is crumbling a little bit, so he did not want that. He went rook takes e5 instead. Bishop f4 threatening the rook and everything. This pawn is becoming a weakness. And now he went for queen d2, which is really good, putting pressure on h6. So h5 stopping from any, sort of sacrifice from happening. And now bishop g5. Vincent went h4, desperately trying to get the bishop out of this diagonal so that he could go queen e3 and exchange queens. Please allow me to exchange queens, Levin. I don't want to get checkmated. Yeah, that may have been what was going through his mind. I'm not sure. But anyways, exchange is the only good thing. And now rook f3 needs to stop black from capturing on b3. Now, after the exchanges, we get this endgame where basically Levin is a pawn up, and it's a very comfortable endgame. Because this pawn over here is going to become a big weakness. How does black defend this pawn? The bishop on a5? What is the bishop on a5 doing? It's a big pawn. It's a pawn that's just huge. I mean, it's just not good. And it's because of the pawns as well that black is just so much worse here. So now, once again, we're starting with the tiki-taka. I hope you guys know what I mean with that. But I'm sure that many of you do. Sort of play where you're just, once again, trying to get your pieces to the best squares possible. Knight e4, fantastic move, threatening the bishop, the pawn. The bishop goes back to e7, and now bishop c8. Look at this. I mean, you cannot go here because there is the fork, but this is just really nice. He's just playing really beautifully, trying to get his knight to the best square possible. Now the knight is threatening the pawn, bishop a5. We get the position that I told you, and the king goes up because the king, everybody, is one of the most important pieces of the endgame. Please use your king when you're playing your endgames, guys. So we saw a little bit of shuffling of moves, h4 stopping any g5. And now the big thing is that white needs to get a passed pawn. If white gets a passed pawn, it's going to be an easy win, But that is white's goal, because right now black is able to stop all of white's pawns, and white needs to get like a, passed pawn to be able to win the game. I mean, you got to get a queen to win. You got to promote a pawn. So everything that we're seeing right now is white trying to get that passed pawn. That is what we're witnessing right now. So bishop a6, and it kind of went a little bit back and forth, and now Vincent blundered. Why did Vincent blunder? Because he allowed Levin to get a passed pawn. This is what I was talking to you about. Boom, h5 in this position. And now, after pawn takes, which is the only move, there's bishop takes f5, and this pawn is a passed pawn. Finally, Levin achieved what he wanted to achieve. So, knight kind of moved around, bishop h7, and we can see now how well Levin plays with his extra passed pawn. He's now moving his king all the way to capture this. He's 2 pawns up at this point. And after a few more moves over here, we can see bishop g8, Vincent Keymer resigned. Why? Because he has no moves. This bishop needs to move pretty much. I mean, if the king moves, there's hanging, and if the bishop moves, there's king g5. And now this pawn is going to promote. There's nothing he can do. This is completely winning. Beautiful game by Levin Aronian, who beat Vincent Keymer. This was absolutely fantastic. Also because Keymer didn't really make any huge blunders. This was just a fantastically well-played game by Levin Aronian. I mean, he pretty much outplayed him. It was amazing. Amazing to see. We will see what happens in the future rounds. The standings right now are looking like this. NODIRBEK is leading the tournament with 4 out of 5 points. Fantastic performance by the 18-year-old. I'm very excited to see what happens in the future rounds. I hope that you guys enjoyed the recap. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.